My sister stole my inheritance and lied about it for years. When I confronted her at Christmas dinner, she demanded I apologize. Karma came back for her. I, 34F, have an older sister, let's call her Emma, 38F. We grew up in a middle-class family in a small town in Michigan. Our parents, Jack and Marie, weren't wealthy by any means, but they were smart with money. Dad worked as an accountant, and Mom was a high school teacher. They always told us they'd set aside something for our futures, emphasizing the importance of education and financial security. Growing up, Emma and I were close, despite our differences. She was always the golden child, straight-A student, popular, and seemed to excel at everything she tried. I, on the other hand, was more of a free spirit. I did well in school but was more interested in art and music than academics. This difference in our personalities often led to tension, especially as we got older. Our mom passed away from cancer when I was 25 and Emma was 29. It was a devastating blow to our family. Dad was absolutely crushed. They had been high school sweethearts and married for over 35 years. He became a shell of his former self, retreating into a world of grief and solitude. Emma, being the responsible older sister, took charge of helping Dad with his affairs. She moved back to our hometown with her then boyfriend, now ex-husband, Mark, to be closer to Dad. I was dealing with my own grief and had just landed a new job as a graphic designer in Chicago. I felt guilty about not being there for Dad as much as Emma was, but I was also trying to build my own life and career. During this time, Emma and I grew apart. Our phone calls became less frequent, and when we did talk, it was mostly about Dad's health and how he was coping. Emma would often make comments about how much she was sacrificing to take care of Dad, while I was living it up in the big city. It hurt, but I tried to brush it off, assuming it was just stress talking. Fast forward 3 years, and Dad passed away too. It was a tough time for both of us. I took time off work and came back home for the funeral and to help settle his affairs. After the funeral, Emma sat me down in Dad's old study for what she called an important talk. She told me about Dad's will, her voice full of what I now recognize as fake sympathy. According to her, he had left the house to her, worth about $300,000, and a savings account with $50,000 to me. She said Dad felt this was fair since she had been taking care of him and had put her life on hold to do so. I was hurt and confused. It didn't sound like Dad to be so uneven in his will, but who was I to question it? Emma had been there, after all. She showed me some paperwork, which I now know was falsified, and I, in my grief and guilt, accepted it without much question. I took my $50,000, paid off some student loans, put a small amount into savings, and tried to move on with my life. I went back to Chicago, throwing myself into my work to distract from the pain of losing both parents in such a short time. Years passed. Emma moved into Dad's house with Mark, and they had 2 kids, Sophia and Lucas. Meanwhile, I struggled financially in Chicago. The graphic design industry was competitive, and while I was making ends meet, I was living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny studio apartment. Every time I visited Emma back home, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment seeing her in that big house, with her seemingly perfect family. But I pushed those feelings down. After all, she had made sacrifices to take care of Dad, right? And family is family. I tried to be the cool aunt to Sophia and Lucas, bringing them little gifts from Chicago and trying not to let my financial stress show. During these visits, Emma would often make subtle digs about my lifestyle. "Oh, still renting? You know, homeownership is really the way to go, or another new job? I'm so glad I have stability in my life." Each comment stung, but I told myself she didn't mean anything by it. Then, last year, everything changed. I had taken a week off work to come help Emma clean out the house. She and Mark were planning to renovate, and there was still a lot of our parents' old stuff in the attic and spare rooms. It was a bittersweet task, going through old memories. On my 3rd day there, I was cleaning out my old childhood bedroom, which Emma had been using for storage. As I was going through the closet, I found a dusty old shoebox tucked away in the back, hidden behind some old coats. Curious, I opened it. Inside were photos I'd never seen before: Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Emma and me as kids playing in the backyard, family vacations I'd almost forgotten about. There were old letters too, love notes between Mom and Dad that made me tear up. But then, at the bottom of the box, I found something that made my blood run cold, a copy of Dad's will. My hands shook as I read it. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Dad had left the house and all his savings to be split equally between Emma and me. There was even a letter addressed to both of us, talking about how proud he was and how he wanted to give us both a good start in life. I felt like I was going to be sick. The room spun around me as the implications sank in. Emma had lied. She had stolen my inheritance. For years, she had watched me struggle while sitting on a pile of money that was rightfully half mine. In that moment, every interaction with Emma over the past few years replayed in my mind. Her smug comments about my financial situation, the way she'd lowered her stability over me, it all took on a sinister new meaning. I must have made some kind of noise because Emma came into the room, asking if I was okay. When she saw the box and the will in my hands, her face went through a series of emotions: surprise, fear, and then anger. "What are you doing going through private things?" she snapped, trying to snatch the will from my hands. I stood up, backing away from her. "Private things? This is Dad's will. The real will. You lied to me, Emma. You stole from me." What followed was the biggest fight we'd ever had. Emma's face turned red as she screamed that I was ungrateful, that she had taken care of Dad while I was off living my life. She said the money was rightfully hers for all her sacrifices. When I reminded her that she had literally stolen from me, that what she'd done was not just immoral but illegal, she completely lost it. She started throwing things, books, old toys, anything she could get her hands on. Then she kicked me out of the house, telling me never to come back. I left in a daze, my mind reeling. I checked into a nearby hotel, the copy of the will clutched tightly in my hands. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with questions. How could Emma do this? How could I have been so blind? The next day, I consulted a lawyer in town. He listened to my story with a grim expression and examined the will. His news wasn't good. Since so much time had passed, it would be difficult to prove anything in court. Emma had covered her tracks well, and without access to Dad's financial records, we had little to go on. I returned to Chicago feeling defeated and betrayed. For months, I was a mess of anger and hurt. I cut off all contact with Emma, which divided our extended family. Some took her side, believing her lies about me being greedy and ungrateful. Others were suspicious but didn't want to get involved in what they saw as a sister's squabble. My Aunt Susan, Mom's sister, was one of the few who believed me right away. "I always thought something was off about that will," she told me over the phone. "Your dad would never have been so uneven." She became my rock during this time, offering emotional support and even helping me out financially when she could. As the months went by, I threw myself into my work, taking on extra freelance projects to build up my savings. I started therapy to deal with the feelings of betrayal and loss. Slowly, I began to heal, but the anger remained, simmering beneath the surface. Christmas rolled around, and Aunt Susan guilt-tripped me into attending the family dinner at Emma's house. "It's time to mend fences," she said. "For the sake of the family. Think of your niece and nephew." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I arrived at Emma's house on Christmas Eve, a bottle of wine in hand and anxiety churning in my stomach. Emma answered the door with a forced smile, acting as if nothing was wrong. The house was decked out in Christmas decorations, and I could hear the excited voices of Sophia and Lucas from the living room. The evening was tense from the start. Other family members darted nervous glances between Emma and me, clearly aware of the undercurrent of hostility. I tried to focus on Sophia and Lucas, listening to their excited chatter about Santa and presents. Emma played the perfect hostess, refilling drinks and making sure everyone's plates were full. But I noticed she was drinking more than usual, her laugh becoming louder and more forced as the night went on. As Emma was serving dessert, Mom's old recipe for apple pie, I couldn't take it anymore. The facade of normalcy, the lies, the years of struggle while Emma lived in luxury, it all came crashing down on me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice shaking. "Emma lied to all of you. She lied to me. Dad left us equal inheritances, but she stole my half and watched me struggle for years." The room erupted into chaos. Emma's face contorted with fury as she lunged towards me. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice shrill. After everything I've done for this family. You need to apologize right now. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Apologize? For what? For finally telling the truth? Emma's husband Mark tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason. She started spewing all sorts of vicious lies about me, claiming I had always been jealous of her, that I was trying to ruin her life because mine was so pathetic. Our relatives looked shocked and confused. Aunt Susan stood up, trying to intervene, but Emma turned on her too, accusing her of always favoring me. The kids started crying, frightened by the adults shouting. Mark ushered them out of the room, throwing a disgusted look at both Emma and me. "Get out of my house!" Emma screamed, picking up her wine glass and throwing it at me. It missed, shattering against the wall behind me, leaving a stain on the family photos hung there. I left, shaken but oddly relieved. The truth was finally out, for better or worse. In the following weeks, the family fallout was intense. Some relatives sided with Emma, but many more believed me, especially after I showed them the copy of the will I had found. Emma's reputation in the family was shattered. Mark, disgusted by her lies and theft, filed for divorce. Several family members cut ties with her completely. But here's where karma really kicked in. Remember that lawyer I talked to? Well, he did some digging and found out that Emma had been evading taxes on rental income from Dad's house for years. Apparently, she had been renting out rooms to college students and pocketing the cash without reporting it. The lawyer reported her to the IRS. The investigation that followed was brutal. IRS agents combed through Emma's finances, uncovering years of tax evasion. She ended up owing hundreds of thousands in back taxes and penalties. To pay it all off, she had to sell Dad's house, the very thing she had stolen from me. Last I heard, she's living in a small apartment on the other side of town. Mark got full custody of the kids, and most of the family wants nothing to do with her. As for me? I'm doing much better. The truth coming out was cathartic, and I've been able to move on with my life. I got a better job at an up-and-coming tech startup in Chicago, moved to a nicer apartment, and I'm finally building the savings I should have had years ago. Some family members have suggested I sue Emma for my share of the inheritance, now that there's proof. I'm considering it, but honestly, seeing her face the consequences of her actions has been satisfying enough. Aunt Susan has become even closer to me, almost like a surrogate mother. She's been helping me navigate the complex emotions that come with this kind of family betrayal. The whole experience taught me a painful lesson about trust and family. But it also showed me who my true supporters are, and I'm grateful for the relatives who stood by me. To those who might be in a similar situation, trust your instincts. If something feels off, dig deeper. The truth has a way of coming out, even if it takes years. And to Emma, if you ever read this, I hope it was worth it. Edit 1. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for the supportive comments and awards. I'm overwhelmed by the response and the number of people sharing similar stories. I'll try to answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I'm still considering legal action. I'm in talks with a different lawyer who specializes in estate fraud. It's complicated because of the time that's passed, but we're exploring options. The fact that Emma falsified documents might work in our favor. 2. For those asking about the rental income, after Dad died, Emma occasionally rented out rooms in the house through Airbnb and to college students. She never reported this income. Apparently, she had been doing this for years, telling the tenants to pay in cash to avoid a paper trail. 3. Some have asked if I feel guilty about Emma's current situation. Honestly, not really. She made her choices, and these are the consequences. I didn't report her to the IRS, that was the lawyer's decision based on what he uncovered. If anyone should feel guilty, it's her. 4. To those sharing similar stories, I'm so sorry you've gone through this too. Family betrayal is a special kind of pain. I hope you all find peace and justice. Consider seeking therapy, it's been incredibly helpful for me in processing all of this. 5. For those asking about my relationship with Emma's kids, they're young, 11 and 9, and I'm trying to maintain a relationship with them. They don't fully understand what happened, and I don't want to put them in the middle. It's a delicate situation. Mark has been surprisingly understanding and allows me to see them occasionally. 6. Many have asked about Aunt Susan. She's doing well and has been an incredible support. We're planning a trip together next summer, something positive to look forward to. 7. To the person who asked if I've told my colleagues, yes, my close work friends know. They've been incredibly supportive. My boss even offered me some time off to deal with everything, which I really appreciated. Edit 2. Since many are asking for an update, here's the latest. 1. I've decided to pursue legal action. My new lawyer believes we have a strong case for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. It won't be easy, but I want to see this through. Not just for the money, but for the principle of it. 2. Emma tried to reach out last week. She left a voicemail full of crocodile tears, saying she was sorry for any misunderstanding and that she wanted to make things right. I haven't responded. It's too little, too late, and frankly, I don't believe her sincerity for a second. 3. I've started more intensive therapy to deal with all this. It's helping me process the anger and betrayal. If anyone's dealing with similar family issues, I highly recommend it. It's not easy, but it's worth it. 4. Some extended family members who initially sided with Emma have reached out to apologize. It's been a mix of emotions, but I'm cautiously rebuilding those relationships. Trust is hard to regain, but I'm trying to be open to reconciliation where it feels genuine. 5. To the person who suggested I write a book about this, I'm actually considering it. This experience has been so surreal, I think it could make for an interesting memoir. Maybe it could help others who've gone through similar situations. 6. My career is taking off. I've been channeling a lot of my emotions into my work, and it's paying off. I've been offered a promotion at the startup, which is exciting. Previous content remains the same. 7. I've started volunteering at a local community center, helping people with financial literacy. It feels good to use my experience to help others avoid similar situations. Thank you all again for the support. It's been a crazy journey, but I'm hopeful for the future. Remember, the truth always comes out in the end. Edit 3, 6 months later, final update, I promise. 1. The legal battle is over. We settled out of court. I can't disclose the exact amount due to the agreement, but it's significantly more than my original inheritance would have been. 2. Emma's life continues to unravel. She lost her job and is struggling to find new employment due to her reputation. 3. I've moved to a new city for a fresh start. Use some of the settlement money to buy a small house. 4. Therapy is ongoing and helpful. I'm working on forgiveness, not for Emma's sake, but for my own peace of mind. 5. The book is happening. I've signed with a small publisher. Writing about this has been incredibly cathartic. 6. I'm still in touch with Emma's kids. Their dad has primary custody, and I visit when I can. 7. Reconciliation with Emma seems unlikely. Too much damage has been done. I'm focusing on healing and moving forward with the family members who've proven themselves trustworthy. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. If there's one lesson I hope people take from my story, it's this: stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. The truth is worth fighting for. Wishing you all the best. May your families be less dramatic than mine.